Sam's Club always gave me a strange comfort. Fluorescent lights humming above, the smell of cardboard and floor polish, the endless bulk of America stacked like blessings. It was quiet on Wednesday mornings, the shelves tall and orderly, as if the world was still asleep and I alone had access to its warehouse heart. That was the day I found it, the oversized jar of peanut butter. Not just any jar. This thing was enormous, comically large. The label read Grove Country Naturals, Family Size Plus. I had never seen the brand before. It sat alone on a wooden pallet, not far from the refrigerated meats, though it didn't belong there. The packaging looked like something out of the 1970s. Faded yellow font, a smiling cartoon squirrel with too many teeth. The air felt oddly still around it, like the warehouse was holding its breath. I'm Evan Bright, and this is the last week I remember being entirely myself. I bought the jar, half amused by its ridiculous size, half drawn by something I couldn't name. The woman at checkout didn't scan it at first. Her eyes flicked toward the label, and she flinched slightly, like she'd touched something hot. Then, pretending nothing happened, she beeped it through and placed it in a box. "Enjoy," she muttered. At home, it sat on my kitchen counter like a forgotten artifact. I didn't even open it the first night, just stared at it from the couch as the evening news played. Something about it unsettled me. The lid was made of heavy black plastic. The label's squirrel seemed to smile wider in the dim light. That night, in bed, I heard it. A whisper, dry and hushed. "Don't forget the bread." I froze. My apartment was silent. The whisper had been low but unmistakable. A male voice, smooth and deliberate. I lay in bed, unmoving. I told myself it had come from the TV left on in the other room. Maybe a commercial. Maybe my imagination. But deep down, I knew. It came from the kitchen. The next morning, I laughed it off. Stress. I'd been working late. I hadn't slept well in weeks. But when I walked into the kitchen, something made my skin crawl. The peanut butter jar was facing me. I don't mean the label, I mean the jar had shifted. Last night, the label had been turned away. Now it was directly pointed toward the room, centered like a statue. The next week, I went back to Sam's Club. I had no reason to. I still had toilet paper and frozen meals to last a month. But I felt pulled, like the warehouse missed me. As I walked through the aisles, I noticed something strange. The intercom music was off. Instead, I heard a soft hum, mechanical, rhythmic, almost like breathing. I passed a display of dish soap, and the bottles seemed aligned. Every label turned toward me. Too perfect. I stopped at the sample counter and took a bite of microwave dumpling. The woman behind the cart gave me a hard look. "Your thoughts are loud," she said quietly. I blinked. "What?" But she just smiled and gestured toward the next sample tray. At home, the whispering returned. But now it wasn't just the peanut butter. My box of cereal muttered at 3:17 a.m., a stream of phrases I hadn't spoken aloud in years. My shoes squeaked, not from rubber, but in bursts of consonants, almost like a cough trying to form syllables. I started testing it. I stood in front of the peanut butter jar and thought about my ex, June. I hadn't told anyone I missed her. Not in months. The jar whispered, "She never hated you, Evan. She just couldn't hear you anymore." I stumbled back. I hadn't said anything, not a word, but the jar had replied as if we were deep in conversation. Over the next few days, I avoided my kitchen. The whispers grew more personal. They didn't just respond, they finished my thoughts. I'd think, maybe I should quit, and the ketchup bottle would murmur, "Before they fire you for being unstable." I started to question what was mine and what was being suggested. I'd write a sentence and stop halfway, only for my fridge magnets to complete it, one letter at a time, clattering into place like teeth. One night, I threw the peanut butter jar in the dumpster behind the complex. It was nearly midnight. I left it there and ran back upstairs, panting, heart pounding. The next morning, it was on the counter. Clean, untouched. The seal was intact. I hadn't brought it back. The whisper that night wasn't in my head. It came from beside my bed. "We don't like the trash, Evan." I stopped trusting mirrors. Every time I passed one, I thought I looked different. Not in the obvious ways. My face was still mine, mostly. But the expressions weren't. I'd catch glimpses of myself staring too long, smiling too wide, frowning when I wasn't sad. Like my reflection was rehearsing a version of me I hadn't agreed to. My voice felt wrong, too. The tone, the phrasing, it shifted subtly, matching things I'd never say, or wouldn't have said, but now did. My coworkers started giving me sideways glances. One of them asked, "You all right, Evan? You sound rehearsed." I told him I was fine, just tired. That wasn't what I meant to say. I didn't choose those words. Something else did. That night, I lay in bed whispering nonsense aloud just to hear my own voice, trying to reassert it over the whispers. But they came louder now. Clearer. They didn't echo anymore. They predicted. When I thought of calling June, the peanut butter jar murmured, "She's already blocked your number." When I considered seeing a therapist, the voice from the fridge corrected, "Not him. He doesn't believe in the spiritual. Try someone else." I never said anything out loud. I stopped going to work. My phone rang, and I didn't answer. I barely ate. The only thing I consumed was toast with peanut butter every day, even though it made my throat feel tight, chalky. Like the more I ate it, the harder it was to swallow anything else. And one night, I heard my own voice coming from the pantry. Not a whisper. A full sentence. "Evan Bright is no longer in control." I returned to Sam's Club. It didn't feel like a store anymore. The lighting flickered in rhythmic patterns. The aisles were silent except for the gentle, synchronized click of security cameras rotating to follow me. No employees in sight, no customers, only me. And the samples were back. Different this time. Instead of food, each table had objects from my apartment, my razor, my shampoo, my sneakers, my old college photo, all arranged neatly on velvet trays like offerings. I walked to the peanut butter section, or where it used to be. Now, the entire wall was lined with jars identical to mine. Row after row of Grove Country Naturals, family size plus, every jar angled exactly toward me. Some lids twitching, just slightly, as if straining to open. The overhead speakers crackled on. "Evan Bright, aisle 47. Downstairs. Time for reformatting." There was no aisle 47, not before. But the floor behind the peanut butter jars opened with a click. A panel slid away. A staircase descended into darkness, faintly illuminated by flickering green bulbs. I should have run, but I didn't. I walked down. The temperature dropped the deeper I went. My breath became visible, misting in front of my face. At the bottom was a cold concrete hallway. Voices echoed from every side, not spoken but thought. My thoughts, others' thoughts. Things I'd never dared say. Memories I hadn't recalled in decades. I passed rooms lined with shelves, but the items didn't have labels anymore. Instead, each bore a name. Nathaniel Green, June Watts, initial phase, Evan Bright, pending completion. I touched my name. The lights shut off. In total darkness, a mechanical voice whispered from within the jar I still somehow carried. "You were not overwritten. You were overwritten correctly." When I woke up, I was back in my apartment, no memory of returning. The peanut butter jar was gone. So was the fridge hum, the cereal box, the ketchup, all silent. Too silent. But I still heard whispers, not external, not environmental, internal. They had moved in. When I spoke, the words weren't mine. I'd reach for my phone and text someone before realizing the message was drafted before I unlocked the screen. I started narrating my own life aloud involuntarily, like a puppet discovering its own strings. Evan Bright walks to the door. He opens it. He smiles. He invites them in. One night, I heard a knock. I opened the door. 3 men in identical Sam's Club polo shirts stood there, smiling too widely. Their name tags read Customer Care, Integration Specialists. They handed me a new jar. Not peanut butter this time. A jar filled with something pale, thick, gelatinous, like rewritable flesh. The label had only one word: upgrade. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. I let them in. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't even know if I wrote this. I just feel the impulse to share it, to upload it, to print it, to pass it along like a sample tray on a quiet morning aisle. So if you're reading this and you ever find yourself at Sam's Club and you see a jar that feels like it's watching you, don't buy it. Don't bring it home. And if you already did, it's too late. They've already started whispering your name. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I never thought I'd end up working the meat section again. After 20 years as a butcher, I hung up my apron and traded blood for quiet. But quiet doesn't pay the rent. So when Sam's Club called, some location off Route 12, middle of nowhere, I took the job. They said they needed someone experienced with cold environments. I didn't ask questions. My name's Mason Teller, and I used to think freezers were just cold. Turns out, they can remember. The first day was simple. Blue vest, name tag, clock in. The manager, a wiry guy named Keith with skin the color of wax paper, took me on a brief tour. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You'll be handling Zone 7, he said, gesturing toward a tall stainless steel door at the back of the meat department. Walk-in freezer. Just stocking, monitoring temp, rotating inventory. You'll be alone back there." I liked the sound of that. No customers, no chatter. Just me in the cold. He handed me a heavy ring of keys and patted my shoulder. His hand was clammy. "One more thing. If you hear anything back there, don't engage. Just keep working." I laughed. "Mice?" He didn't laugh back. The walk-in freezer was bigger than expected. Cathedral ceilings. Rows of suspended slabs of beef, ribs stacked like petrified books, hanging chickens frozen mid-flap. The air was colder than any freezer I'd worked in, sharp, crystalline, the kind of cold that bites the inside of your lungs. At first I thought the lights were flickering, but they weren't. It was the meat. Some pieces twitched, barely noticeable, just a shiver here, a ripple there. I told myself it was the fans or the refrigerant vibrations. I noticed something else, the labels. Every package was tagged with a future date. Beef flank, Zo 7/13, 2027, ground pork 204, 2029, whole chicken 11/18, 2031. We were in 2025. At first, I assumed it was a labeling glitch, but the dates were consistent, accurate. As if the meat hadn't just been packaged, it would be packaged. From the future. Some cuts even had names attached. Ella Bradley, 12/22/2030, S607, 2028, names, not suppliers, not brands, names. I went to Keith. "You know some of the meats dated 5, even 10 years ahead?" He looked at me for a long moment, then shook his head. It's a backup inventory, long-term forecasting, logistics stuff. Just follow your task list. But you like having a job, right? I didn't press, but I started watching. Every day the freezer felt colder, tighter. The back wall seemed farther away each shift. Sometimes I'd turn around and a slab of meat I swear I hadn't stocked would be hanging behind me, swinging lightly. I started marking the floor with chalk at the end of each day, just to see if anything moved. They always did. One night the fan shut off. Just silence. I looked up and saw my breath hang midair like fog on glass. That's when I noticed a door. Not the stainless one I entered through. The different one. Older. Wooden. Hidden behind a rack of pork shoulders. Sealed with ice around the edges. No handle. Just a carved symbol on the center. A handprint. I pressed mine against it. The door clicked. The door swung open with the soft groan of ancient wood, even though it was clearly frozen. Behind it wasn't another freezer room. Not really. It looked like a cave carved from ice, with jagged walls reflecting a dim, sourceless light. The air was colder, not just freezing but wrong. My breath turned to snowflakes that clung to my beard. Every footstep echoed like I was walking on frozen bone. The meat hooks continued inside, but they didn't hold meat. They held people. I froze. The bodies hung upright, not butchered, not bloody, just preserved, frozen mid-expression. Dozens of them, some with eyes wide open, others with mouths slack in silent screams. Their name tags were still on. Mark, Jessica. Manager, Carla. I recognized one of them. It was the sample lady who smiled too much and gave out mini meatballs near the front. She'd been missing since Tuesday. I stumbled backward and my shoulder clipped something metallic. Another door. I didn't open it. It opened for me. Inside was a room filled with mirrors. Hundreds of them, all frosted at the edges. Each one showed a different version of the store, but not now. In each reflection, the shoppers wore outdated clothes. Old logos, grainy lighting like a VHS tape. I saw families walking through Sam's Club in 1998, 2010, 1979. All of them looked normal, except none of them cast reflections in the mirrors. Only I did. I backed away, heart pounding, throat tightening in the cold. Then one of the mirrors moved. Not just the glass, the image. One of the shoppers turned and looked directly at me. His lips moved. "Not yet, Mason. Not your turn." The mirror cracked. I sprinted out of the hidden corridor, nearly slipping on the frost-covered floor. But the main freezer, the one I'd come from, wasn't there anymore. The racks had shifted. The walls were rearranged. It was a maze now. I turned left, then right, then left again. No door. No lights except the low throb of the emergency bulbs, pulsing like veins. I passed a hanging side of beef labeled Mason Teller, 08/12/2026. I reached out without thinking. It twitched. I screamed. The air was thinner now. Every breath felt like inhaling needles. My fingertips were numb and my legs shook. Somewhere in the distance I heard the humming. The same freezer hum as always, but deeper, hungrier. Then, from the darkness behind me, a voice whispered, "The freezer remembers." I turned and ran blindly toward the voice, toward anything that wasn't frozen silence. My boots slid across slit concrete as the humming grew louder. Not mechanical anymore. It sounded like breathing now. Deep, wet, slow breathing, as if the store itself were asleep beneath layers of ice. The freezer racks curved inward like a rib cage. I wasn't just walking through a meat locker anymore. I was inside something. Something alive. Eventually, I stumbled into an open space at the center of the maze. A cold chamber lit by a single swaying fluorescent bulb overhead. In the middle of the room stood a control panel, an ancient thing, rusted, crusted in ice, with green-lit buttons blinking like eyes half open. Above it, mounted into the wall, were dozens of locker doors. Each door had a label. Memory, 08/12/1989, M. Teller, birthday, steak, balloons, mother's smile. Mru 5/17/2004, M. Teller, first cut, pork loin, sharp knife, blood. Memory 3/22/2017, M. Teller, last call with dad, regret, silence, disconnect. I staggered backward, my breath catching in my throat. They weren't just storing meat, they were storing moments, memories, mine. Everyone's, chilled, preserved, filed away like old receipts. Then I understood the dates on the meat, not when they were butchered, but when they will be. These were predictions, designations, fate, carved and frozen into flesh. I looked to the side and saw more slabs, more labels. Janet Wallace, 07/32. C. Harris, 10/15/2028. Jackson Giles, 12/03/2029. All future dates. All names of Sam's Club employees. Some of them were new hires, others hadn't started yet. And at the far end of the room, mounted on the wall in red steel, was the largest door yet. Etched into the metal was a phrase, "Preservation is purpose." I walked toward it, legs aching from cold, and placed my palm on the panel. It slid open with a hiss of freezing air. Inside, the walls were made entirely of mirrors again. But this time, every reflection was me. Me in childhood. Me as a young butcher. Me now, older, afraid. Me frozen in place, eyes wide. I looked down. The floor was made of ice. And under the surface, I saw my own body. Naked, curled, preserved, waiting. I pounded on the ice. It didn't crack. It didn't even echo. My fists ached from the cold, but the image beneath me stayed the same. My body, perfectly preserved beneath the frost, eyes closed like a corpse that never got the memo it had died. But I was alive. I was still here. Wasn't I? I looked at my hands. They were turning pale, not from the cold, but translucent, veins like spiderwebs. My breath no longer fogged in the air. My heart wasn't beating fast anymore. It wasn't beating at all. Then the mirrors began to ripple. One by one, the other masons blinked, moved, smiled. One pressed his hand against the glass, the same motion I made. He was copying me. No, he was watching me. A voice hummed softly through the vents, the same breathy tone I heard before. We keep what's meaningful. We freeze what matters. We preserve memory, not the person. The lights dimmed, casting a dull pink hue across the mirrors. A new locker door slid open beside me. It wasn't labeled yet, just blank, waiting. The control panel flickered to life and buzzed. A mechanical voice announced, slowly and clearly, "Memory capture in progress. Subject 4970 Teller. Current state extraction." I staggered back toward the hallway, but it had vanished. Just smooth, mirrored walls now. No exit, just reflections of me, hundreds of them, and the mason inside the ice. His eyes were open now. He was staring directly at me. He smiled, and in my head I heard his voice. "You're just the echo now, the memory. I'm what's left." I screamed. My own reflection didn't move. None of them did. Just him. The one under the ice. The real mason. He reached up. The glass above him cracked, and I felt my bones lock in place. First my fingers, then my jaw. My legs buckled as frost crawled up my calves, biting into flesh, replacing it with numb stillness. My last thought before the cold took over was how quiet it all was. No one would hear me scream. No one would even remember I worked here. Except the freezer. They hired someone new last week. I saw him, young guy, nervous smile, first day on the job. I tried to warn him, I tried to scream, but I don't have lungs anymore. I'm part of the hum now. the cold current. Sometimes he walks near my locker. I can feel it. My memory stirs just slightly. And someday soon, he'll find the hallway behind the pork shoulders, and he'll press his hand against the door with the carved symbol. And he'll hear the voice, just like I did. The freezer remembers. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, share, and subscribe.